Okay, let's really get into this. We're looking at, well, one of those questions that just keeps coming up, doesn't it? Why do groups clash? Why does discrimination seem to pop up everywhere all through history?
Yeah, it's a big one. And is there some kind of, I don't know, almost a rationality behind it, even if it's something we find really ugly?
Is it just something learned, or are there these like deeper patterns, maybe things that just happen based on how we interact?
Exactly. And you, our listener, you send over some fascinating source material for this deep dive that looks right at this.
We've got stuff from a physicist thinking about social patterns, really specific computer simulations, some classic social experiments, and some pretty stark real-world examples, too.
So our mission today really is to unpack all that.
Hmm.
We want to get to the heart of the ideas in these sources about why group divisions seem to, well, emerge.
And what that might tell us about, human society more broadly.
It kind of asks us to step back, maybe look at society a bit differently, almost like a physicist might.
Like a physicist, how
Yeah.
so?
Well, one perspective in your sources comes from Mark Buchanan's book, The Social Atom. The idea is, for understanding big trends, maybe think of people less like complex individuals and more like, well, social atoms.
Atoms, okay. And their interactions are like forces.
Sort of, yeah, sources that drive collective behavior. The benefit, the book argues, is you could ignore the endless individual details for a moment.
And see the big patterns instead. Think patterns, not people, at least for this kind of
Right,
analysis.
and this way of thinking is often used when scientists create these artificial worlds, simulations.
Which brings us to that simulation you mentioned, the four colors world. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was done back in 2003. Robert Axelrod and Ross Hammond set it up specifically to study how group conflict might just evolve on its own.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What was this world like?
Pretty simple, actually. Imagine a 50 by 50 grid, like a basic computer screen. And on it are these little agents, simulated people, basically.
Got it. And how did they start out?
This is key.
Hmm.
They started out almost identical. Same chance of reproducing, like 12%, same chance of dying, about 10%, same tiny chance of a random gene mutation. Really, really similar.
So what was different? There had to be something.
Just one thing, color. They were randomly made, yellow, red, blue, or green. That was literally it. No history, no shared culture, nothing. Just a color label.
Okay, random colors. Then what? They just mingled.
Pretty much. They interacted with their neighbors on the grid, simple pairwise exchanges.
And how did those interactions work?
The researchers set up a rule. Helping your neighbor cost you a tiny bit, like a 1% dip in your reproduction chance.
Hmm.
But getting help gave you a bigger boost, 3% increase.
Ah, okay, so there's an incentive to cooperate, but also a cost. Sounds like a classic.
Prisoner's dilemma, exactly. There's that temptation to defect, right?
Hmm.
To not help. Get the benefit if the other guy helps you, but pay no cost. But if you both defect,
Yeah.
nobody gains.
Right, and based on how these interactions went, the agents could, what, move around? Reproduce?
Yep. Move, reproduce, or die off.
Huh.
And crucially, they passed their strategies for interaction onto their offspring.
Strategies? What kind of strategies did they have?
There were four basic options programmed in or maybe assigned at the start.
Mm-hmm.
One was humanitarian, basically. Cooperate with everyone you meet, no matter the color.
Okay, the nice guy strategy.
Then the opposite. Selfish, defect on everyone, always look out for number one.
Makes sense. What else?
Then the interesting one, ethnocentric. Cooperate, but only with agents of your own color. If they're a different color, you defect.
Ah, okay. In-group good, out-group? Not so much.
Precisely. And the last one's called traitor. Cooperate with different colors, but defect on your own color group.
That seems like a tough strategy to make work.
You'd think so. Okay, so you start the simulation. Sparse population, colors all mixed up, strategies probably mixed about 25% each. Let it run for 500 rounds. Generations pass. What do you think happens?
Based on where this is going, I'm guessing the colors don't stay mixed up.
Not at all. What consistently emerged was striking. The agents clustered together by color. The grid would end up with these distinct patches. Yellow areas, red areas, blue, green, segregation, basically.
Wow, just from those simple rules. And what about the strategies? Did one win out?
Overwhelmingly. The ethnocentric strategy, cooperate with your own, defect against others, became dominant. By the end, something like 3/4 of the agents were using it.
3/4. And this wasn't just a one-off.
Nope. The sources stress this happened again and again, even if they tweaked the starting number slightly. It was a really robust result.
Okay, so why? Why does that happen? In a world where everyone's the same except for a random color, Why does us versus them based on color become the winning strategy?
Well, the explanation given is basically simulated evolution.
Hmm.
It's natural selection in action within the computer.
How so?
Think about it. The ethnocentric strategy works pretty well in that environment. By cooperating with your own color, you build strong, mutually beneficial clusters. Everyone in your little patch helps each other and thrives.
Okay, that makes sense. Internal cooperation is good.
But by defecting against other colors, you protect your group from being exploited by outsiders who might just take the benefits without cooperating back. It's defensive.
So it's not necessarily nicer, but it's effective. It helps the group survive and grow.
Exactly. It proved to be the most stable and successful approach over many generations in that specific simulated world. Agents using it did better, reproduced more, and so the strategy spread. It got imitated, essentially.
And the sources are clear. Color here isn't just about race, right? It's a stand-in.
Absolutely critical point. Color represents any label, any marker people use to tell groups apart. Could be anything.
Like what, for example? Give me some real-world parallels they meant.
Loads. Religion, political party, nationality, sure. But also things like the company you work for, the university you attended, even your dialect or accent.
Good accent, really?
Yeah, or even, like, your taste in clothes or music. The simulation suggests the label itself doesn't need deep meaning. Its power comes from just being there as a way to distinguish us from them.
That reminds me of that anecdote in the source material from the book class about formal wear.
Oh yeah, that's a great example. Whether you call it a tux or a tuxedo or dinner jacket, seemingly tiny differences in vocabulary.
But they functioned as these subtle signals, right? Markers of social class that people used, maybe unconsciously, to sort and judge each other. A word choice becomes a color.
Exactly, it reinforces that division. And this connects back to the simulation's sort of harsh logic.
What do you mean harsh logic?
The sources make this point using a pretty stark analogy. Even if you personally don't want to discriminate, if you live in a world where other agents are using color or labels to decide who to help and who to exploit,
Then what? You're kind of forced to play the game.
it suggests you might be incentivized to act based on your label too. Cooperate with your group. Be wary of others. Just to survive. Just to get by.
Wow. That's where that quote comes in, isn't it? In a world of maggots.
Only maggots survive.
It's provocative, obviously, but the point is that the environment, shaped by how others behave, can powerfully push certain strategies, even ones we might find distasteful.
And this isn't just simulations. The sources bring up real-world studies too, right? Like that Robbers Cave experiment.
Oh, absolutely. That's a classic from, the 1950s. Really illuminating.
Yeah, tell us about that one. They took a bunch of kids.
22 12-year-old boys. None knew each other beforehand. They randomly split them into two groups, housed them separately at a summer camp.
And then?
First, they just had each group do activities together. Team building stuff, Hiking, swimming, collaborating on tasks, building bonds within their group.
So they bonded with their own team first. What happened then?
What's truly incredible is how fast the use us versus them thinking kicked in. Within just days, before the two groups had even properly met, they started bragging about their own group, the Eagles or the Rattlers, and making fun of the other group. Seriously.
Yeah.
Just based on being put in separate teams.
Yep. And then, when they finally arranged for the groups to meet and compete, bam, instant hostility.
Like what? Just trash talk.
Way beyond that.
Yeah.
Shouting insults, raiding the other group's cabin, trying to burn their flag. I mean, real animosity flared up incredibly quickly, all stemming from an arbitrary group assignment.
That's kind of scary, actually. It sounds just like the simulation. Assign a random color or label, structure the interactions, and boom, in-group love, out-group hate.
It's a powerful demonstration of how easily it can happen. And the sources link this to other real-world things, too, like the gang situation in L.A.
The Crips and Bloods, identified by color, blue and red.
Right. Obviously, there's a complex history there involving territory, drugs, lots of factors. But the source material highlights how fundamental that color identity became. Wearing blue or red wasn't just affiliation. It was a life or death marker.
A primary driver of the conflict itself.
And the really tragic part mentioned is that many of these rival gang members actually grew up in the same neighborhoods. They might have been childhood friends.
But the color, the group label, overrides that shared history. Puts them on opposing sides.
It becomes the defining difference driving lethal conflict.
And when you scale this up, the sources connect these dynamics, the simulation, the camp experiment, the gangs, to much larger conflicts, right?
Tragically, yes. They point to horrific events like the genocide in Rwanda in 1994 or the ethnic cleansing in Bosnia in 1995 as extreme, devastating outcomes of worlds where group identity and discrimination run rampant and are exploited.
Where the us versus them based on a label spirals completely out of control.
Exactly. So bringing it all together, what the sources seem to be suggesting is that these patterns, the group clustering, the bias, aren't necessarily some deep mystery. They're examples of what scientists call emergence.
Emergence. Okay, explain that a bit more.
Emergence is when you get complex, large-scale behaviors or patterns showing up that arise purely from lots of simple interactions happening at a lower level. Think of a flock of birds suddenly wheeling in unison, or an ant colony building a complex structure.
Right, no single bird or ant is directing the whole show, but the pattern emerges from their simple local interactions.
Precisely. It's not like a simple chain reaction, A leads to B leads to C. It's more nonlinear.
Mm.
Lots of small things happening together create something qualitatively different at the macro level.
Like the source's analogy, 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, it might equal apple, something unexpected.
Yeah, it's a different kind of causality. It suggests that maybe some social problems like pervasive bias aren't solely down to individual malice or explicit planning.
But they can be patterns that just arise from the way we interact and the labels we use, even if individuals don't consciously intend that outcome.
That seems to be the core idea presented in the material you shared. It's a different lens for thinking about these persistent social issues.
So wrapping this up for you, our listener, synthesizing what we've pulled from these sources, it's complex, isn't it?
Definitely. On the one hand, we absolutely fight against discrimination. It's a social ill. But these models, these experiments, they suggest that the tendency to form groups, to favor our own, based on sometimes trivial distinctions, well, that might be a pattern that can emerge quite easily from the basic dynamics of social interaction.
It's almost like a potential fault line in how societies organize themselves.
Perhaps. Certainly challenges us. If simple differences, random colors in a simulation, or team names at a camp, can spark divisions so readily.
Then what does that mean for our efforts to build, wider cooperation, real understanding across bigger divides?
And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. How aware are we in our own lives, our own communities, of the labels we use, the small distinctions that might seem harmless?
But which, under certain conditions, could potentially grow into those deeper, more damaging divides? Something to really think about.